Hey everyone, this is the Heroes podcast again. I'm so happy to be back. I've got someone here, someone who is almost like a father figure to me, Ian Westmoreland. How are you?
G'day, Andrew. Well, are we going to be honest here? So I'm not 100% at the moment, but anyway, But I'm excited about being having this conversation with you.
Yeah, wonderful. So what I'll do, I'll just intro you and then off we run. So Ian Westmoreland is the founder of the not-for-profit organizations Mentoring Men and Kintsugi Heroes. You will hear a lot about them very soon. Life-changing moment in September 2013 would alter the course of Ian's life. It would see him leave a lucrative 42-year IT career to devote himself entirely to volunteer work. How amazing. By sharing his inspirational story, Ian demonstrates how removing that many masks we wear for others allows us to reveal our authentic selves, improve relationships, meet new people, and reclaim control of our lives. Welcome on the show, Ian. Tell me about the journey. Probably you had some challenges, right? What do you want to share?
Um, I guess the first thing that came to mind, I guess there's three, key challenges that stand out in my life. The first challenge was as a teenager and the confusion around what a man is. How should a man behave? And I think back to my father would take me and my two brothers and some of his mates and their boys. We go camping in Victoria in the Strzelecki Ranges, and it was all about guns. It was all about shooting animals, and I struggled with that. I hated killing anything, and while they would go out shooting at the night time, spotlighting, I would stay back at the tent as a 10 or 11-year-old, questioning my manhood. And I remember one of my dad's mates, he'd had a 303, which is a very powerful rifle, and he would lie on his back and he'd try and shoot these wedge-tailed eagles out of the sky. And I guess that's the first thing. I guess later on, I don't know why, but I really suffered from a lack of confidence. Uh, I used to think that what sort of woman would want to marry me? And my goal back then was to, gee, if I could just be average, it would be really good. I set the bar low, Indra. Um, and then as life has gone on, both those issues have been addressed. I've got my own definition of a man, and I'm quite content with my manliness, if you like, and I've become more and more comfortable with the sort of person I am. I guess the third challenge is a health challenge at the moment. That's when you asked me how I was at the start of the conversation. That was my first thought. So, like a lot of people, my vintage, we spent a lot of time in the sun, and we would rub coconut oil on our skins to get a healthy tan. And in Australia, you've got the hole in the ozone layer, and the sun does incredible damage over time. And I've had what they call the trifecta of skin cancers. Sorry, I just grabbed water. So I've had the squamous cell, the basal, whatever it is, cell, and sorry. And recently I got diagnosed with metastasized melanoma. And so it's not a good thing to get. Normally they have a stage 0 and they'll cut it out. If they don't get it all, or they get it later, it actually goes through your lymph node system that can travel around your body. And in the days gone past, it wasn't a good thing to have. It's still not a good thing to have, but there's been some technology to help improve the cases. So I've had surgery for that. I'm going through what they call immunotherapy, and it's playing up with my immune system. So I love what I do, and most of the time I'm mentally feeling good, but physically, to be honest, I feel absolutely crap sometimes. And last night wasn't a good night. So that's total vulnerability, openness. I love life. I'm absolutely blessed with an amazing family. But I think anyone, I was going to say, gets to our age, you said father, almost a grandfather too, but you go through your own lived experiences, and that's I'm currently going through that lived experience around sickness.
Wow, you got a lot to deal with. I was thinking while you were sharing your younger years, because self-worth is my thing, self-confidence. How did you see that lack of confidence playing out in your life?
Incredibly shy, never wanting to stand out, poor decision making to try and make myself popular. Um, uh, I went from ducks of primary school to failing my HSC because it wasn't cool to ever ask a question in class or do any study. And it was like we lived 2 miles from the school. And early on, I used to ride my bike to school, but then it became uncool to ride a bike. So I'd walk 2 miles to school and walk 2 miles home again. Um, eh, yeah, okay. So it's just a number of negative impacts. You just don't enjoy life as much as what you could. Um, Andrew, your videos keep going off and on. You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Technical issues are always challenging us. Wow,
Yeah.
I thought I had it difficult. And tell me, what has changed it? Is it connected to one event, or there was sort of you started to pick up the pieces and be able to step into your own power? Because I believe then it sort of led to a long career, which again ended up in different sort of challenges.
Yeah. I guess the last 9 years has been amazing in terms of personal growth, but there's been a number of other events along the way. So I've got no formal qualifications. I've got the School of Life and Hard Knocks, but it's just been through hard work and taking risks encouraged by my wife. And there's been a number of key steps along the journey where, um, early on in our marriage, we struggled financially. I had a full-time job and I would do part-time work. My wife was cleaning houses and working at a restaurant at the night time. And just when we got married, we moved into a milk bar in Melbourne. So I would work 7 days a week, including a full-time thing. And gradually, as we did more and more of that, things started to go well. And even though I didn't have qualifications, my IT career, after a slow start, kicked off. And as I developed more skills and I realized the importance of people skills and organizational skills, I gradually moved up to better paid and more senior positions, and actually there's some huge risks. So after 22 years working for Telstra, I quit. No package. I quit my job and I moved my wife and 4 kids to take up a contract role in New Zealand. And of course, there's still that self-confidence. Well, everyone's smarter. I've worked in the public service, but what's it going to be like in the real industry? And it was such a brave move. So I would never have done it without the encouragement of my wife. But it was turned out to be a game changer. And then from that then changes the perception. And then I moved to Sydney and had a great career where there was a turning point in 2013 where I was increasingly thinking there's more to life than just making money and delivering software changes. And as you said in the intro, on the 10th of September 2013, an event happened that changed my life and the future direction to the point where I quit paid work in May 2014. And I've been a full-time volunteer since then.
Do you want to expand or tell us more about this turning point? Is it a specific event?
Sure.
What has happened?
So first, I say that the two charities or not-for-profit organizations I've set up, Mentoring Men and Kintsugi Heroes, they're secular. I don't care what people's backgrounds or beliefs or cultures or abilities, any of those things don't matter. Everyone is welcome to engage. My own story, I'm a Christian, and what I happened on the 10th of September said I've been thinking there's more to life than just making money, and I've been meditating on this. And then on that day, I got on the train and I continued to read a book one my youngest daughter had given me, and I've got the book here. It's actually called Sun Stand Still. It's by American pastor Steve Furtick. And in the book, what I read that day when I turned the page, he basically questioned the meaning of life for Christians. And what he said, and I've got it highlighted here, I was actually ticking these off as I read them. We feel like we're living or doing our part as long as we live decent lives. Sort of tick. I got into a bit of mischief as a late teenager, and I can share that if you want. The police gave me an easy time, so but it could have been a lot worse. Stay out of trouble, pay taxes, tick, have babies, tick. So we have 4 kids, make a living, tick, buy a boat, bought a couple of boats. And then he said, hit age 59 and a half, collect retirement, die. I was born on the 10th of March, 1954. So I was 59 and a half to the day that I read that. Why would an author say hit age 59 and a half, collect retirement? I mean, in Australia, it's, well, it used to be 60. It's like, I think it's 65. The countries keep increasing it. And so it got my attention. And if you like, that was the first of a whole series of what I guess many people would just say, oh, Ian, they're coincidences, but there's coincidences just kept happening again and again and again and again. For me, I feel this is my purpose, that my new purpose in life. I'm actually doing what I was called to do. And that was the first thing. So from that led me into an event 2 days later. I won't go into too much detail because I ran out of time, but that event 2 days later, then it led me down the mentoring path. So I started mentoring young kids in Sydney high schools. And I love doing that. And in fact, I was mentoring at multiple schools. And then I found another program that mentored kids in primary schools. So I started doing that as well. And then I found another program that was mentoring into the family environment. And I became a coordinator for that. So I was involved with 3 mentoring programs. Loving that and just listening. And it's like we talked before about the growth. This is a huge growth spurt for me. And then in 2018, I was mentoring a young guy in one of the Sydney high schools. And I met with him and he shared with me that his father had suicided. His mum was an addict who was in and out of rehab. And he was living with his grandparents, which he hated. And then he just turned and he looked at me in the eyes and he started crying. And then he said, Ian, help me. Now, one of the things I've learned about myself is I have a lot of empathy. But what can you do? What could you do in that situation? And I debriefed with a program counselor as part of this program later. And I told her the situation, looking for advice. And she said, Ian, are you okay? And I just started crying myself. And I was flat for a couple of months. And then I realized I wanted to have a mentor, just like all these young kids that I've been mentoring. So I looked around for the nearest organization that provided life mentoring to men. I should clarify this. Mentoring is such a broad term. For most people in business, it's where someone with acquired skills and knowledge and experience guides, directs, advises someone else, often in a business context. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I call life mentoring is predominantly listening. It's supporting, it's encouraging. The people aren't broken. They don't need fixing. They just need to be validated, to be listened to. If you soften the way, they just need to be shown love. Anyway, so I looked around for the nearest organisation that provided life mentoring to men and was surprised and incredibly disappointed to find there was nothing suitable. As a demographic, and Andrew, I see the impact it's having on you, and I know your story. You shared your story as part of the Kintsugi hero, and it amazes me that there was nothing out there. Like just on statistics, the suicide rate of men to women is 3 or 4 to 1. And we tend to struggle more around vulnerability, around shame, around these sorts of issues that can be dramatically improved with a life mentor. So anyway, it motivated me to write a proposal to establish an organisation which became known as Mentoring Men, which is a free program where we train up volunteer men to support other men in life. Now, there's a whole bunch of other coincidences or things that happened around that, how I met our local federal MP, whose father had suicided. He came on as our ambassador. He's been a huge influence and support of Mentoring Men. He's mentioned us in federal parliament, and he's spoken at a number of events. His name is Julian Lisa, an amazing, honourable man. And that was it. After a slow start, the program has just boomed. And initially, my wife and I, one of the directors, put a relatively small amount of money in, and it's now so started in November 2018. So coming up to 5 years, and it's last year the revenue was over $1 million, and it's geared up. There's thousands of men have engaged, and I've stepped off off the board and all the operational roles. I'm still an ambassador for it. But long after I'm gone, it'll be an eternal legacy of men supporting men. And I'm still a mentor through Mentoring Men. I mentor a young guy in Perth at the moment, which I love doing. And interestingly, also, I'm mentoring a young guy in Johannesburg in South Africa, not through Mentoring Men, but through just because he reached out to me and asked to be mentored. And I love doing that. I think every one of us would benefit from having someone we can be in a relationship where there's trust, there's confidentiality, we know we're not going to be judged, and we can just speak what we're feeling and know we're going to be heard.
Oh, this is giving me goosebumps. We're talking about unconditional love and support, I believe. I'm still stuck in here. How could you start mentoring without formal qualifications? Was that a thing at a time to just, sure, I mean, because what I found as a coach, I found that I was asked for certificates and paperwork, because I do come from that place of unconditional love, because it's because it was in the past, or did they just see you as an inspirational person who is coming from support and love and understanding, so they just gave you the opportunity? How did you do that?
So I've done training courses for all these mentoring programs, and Mentoring Men, we have our own. I think it's a great training course. So there's training around that, but it's almost like you've got to detrain men. Often us men think there's a situation, I've got to fix it. And interestingly, it's incredibly therapeutic when someone can just share what they're feeling and know they're being listened to. There's an amazing poem that we as part of our mentor training course. It's called Just Listen. It was written by an American, Ray Horton, back in 1979. And people think, I think going into the training course, I've got to have all this knowledge, this experience. I've got to have all the answers. I've got to have all, and I'd say, no. I mean, there's some techniques you can pick up. Personally, I find those techniques way too hard. You know, mirroring and paraphrasing and all the, I find it too hard. I would just rather have a conversation, ask a few questions, and just listen. and the build the relationship over time. And sometimes this happened recently. We're not even aware of the impact we had. One of the young guys I mentored in 2015, about 3 months ago, he contacted the mentoring organization to see if they would pass on my contact details. So as part of that with school programs, you can't swap any contact details. You can't meet out of school. It's you turn up at school and you have it. And so I said, absolutely. So we connected for a cup of coffee. So here we are, 8 years down the track. He wanted to tell me the impact that mentoring had on his life. And he had a very high truancy rate, like WAG school all the time. And I remember he came from a dysfunctional family. And he said the mentoring came it gave him some security. It gave him someone there who was listening to him. And he was proud of it. He'd gone on and he was now a team leader working as a tradie, a carpenter. And in fact, he then offered, I caught up with him a couple of weeks later. He actually made a promotional video for the mentoring organization, and they asked me to come along and be part of that as well. Now, I think back on that, I didn't need educational qualifications. I didn't need to have answers to any problem. I just needed to listen and to care about the welfare of this guy. And we'd share some stuff. You know, he was passionate for rugby league, or fugby league, as I called it, and I AFL, and we'd have a bit of banter. Yeah, I think humor is a great part of the relationship. But there's been other cases like that. So it doesn't need to be this Einstein who can come along, or Freud or whatever. It's the answers are not a medical health professional in most of the cases. The answers are just what I said before. And my long-term dream is to try and rebuild the connections so that we've got a society that does listen and support and care. I was at a workshop today and someone said that, and this surprised me, almost disagree with it, only 1 in 4 people know the names of their neighbours on both sides.
Wow.
Which is a really sad reflection. I think back to my childhood. We were poor. We never had a telephone, but Mrs. Ryan, 3 houses down, had a phone. So we would give out her number and then she would come and tell us there was a phone call for us. And you knew all the neighborhood people, where we got the eggs from Mrs. House down the road, and have a cup of tea over here. And like, there's all this stuff. We still got up to mischief, but there was that village concept. And it's one of the negative trends in society. We've moved away. There's more fences. You know, to some extent, we've moved away from that. And one of my goals is to help us move back towards that.
Yeah, I hear music because I still believe that creating space, safe space, with the right energy that normally comes from you or whoever is the mentor, or sometimes I call it coaching, but people have the answers, or they find their own answers, because all they need is reconnection to their own resources. And
yes,
they don't need an expert as such. They work it out if they are nurtured, if they are given back their own potential, I have to say. So what else? How did the other organization came about? Because I understand Mentoring Man is massive, and please share if you need any sort of resources or people to connect with so we can help you. Also, I was wondering, how come the other one? Because that's a recent project, yes?
It started recently, but it goes back to 1993. So I shared before the lack of confidence that I had. And one of the things that helped for me was to read stories of people overcoming adversity, like the Nelson Mandela type stories. And I knew the power it had in me, and I thought, how good would it be? Because most people who've achieved something, it's not an overnight success. And I've got a lot of thoughts around the definition of success, and I could talk about that later if you wanted. But most people who are successful have been through challenges to get there. So the idea I had was to contact successful people and ask them to share a bit of their story. And that would then give hope and inspiration to others. But back then I didn't have the time. Certainly didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the money. So I wrote to 3 community leaders in August 1993 to let them know about this idea that I had. And one of them, well-known entrepreneur Dick Smith, sent me back a handwritten note. And the note said, Ian, this is a great idea. And then he added, you do it. And it just sat there for whatever that is, 93 to 30 years, whatever. And then when I stepped aside from the operational side of mentoring men, I had a couple of months with less work. For anyone starting up a business or a not-for-profit, if you're like me, you totally underestimate how much work's involved. For me, I do this 7 days a week, and it's not, there's some hard stuff, and I love doing it. But and I thought, I'm going to give this a go. And of course, the technology changed a lot. There was a whole bunch of stuff I didn't know much about, still don't, around podcasts and all that sort of stuff. But I decided I would do this. And a mate of mine, in fact, he was the mentoring men trainer. told a few people what I was going to do. He said, I've got the name for your project, Ian. I said, what's that? He said, Kintsugi. And I said, I've never heard of it. What does it mean? And he told me it's a Japanese term. And the legend is there was a Japanese emperor who had some valuable pottery, like my $2 cup here. And over time, it chipped and cracked and showed the signs of wear and tear. And he said to the craftsmen, fix it, make it new. And they couldn't do it. But what they could do was highlight the damage as part of the repair using a precious metal like gold. And now when you look at it, it's far more beautiful. It's far more valuable than what it was before. And it's the metaphor. It's the metaphor for the Ians and the Endras, for what we go through, the experiences we have. The goal I set initially was to give hope and inspiration to people going through life challenges. But I've now added another 2 goals for this. And it blows me away that this happens. But the second goal is to help people who have been through adversity reframe how they look at that. And instead of looking at back as an awful thing that happened, actually reframe it. It can be an asset. I had a young guy, he's 30 years old, contact me about 3 weeks ago. And he got Crohn's disease as a 2-year-old, and he's got a colostomy bag. And he obviously went through a hard time as a child with a colostomy. But his goal, he's producing all this online content to encourage people with physical disabilities to get back into the workforce. In fact, I've just sent him through, I saw a loan opportunity, grant opportunity for it. And I hear a lot of stories like this. By going through the cancer treatment, the hospital had a cancer support group, and they asked me if I'd like to get involved in quilting. And I said, oh, no, thank you. But my goal is to do a series of stories around people living with cancer, because there's a whole bunch of good news stories out there. And what they're shown with serious illnesses, the mental attitude plays a key part. It's a factor, it can be a big factor in the recovery rates. So if people get these uplifting, positive messages of stories of other people who've overcome these things, it can really help. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at doing. So that was the second. So the first thing, give hope and inspiration. Second thing, help people reframe what they've been through to actually see it as an asset to build their own resilience and help others. And the third thing, I realized how ignorant I was in so many aspects of life, around addiction, around how to support people going through challenges, whole bunch of stuff. And the third thing is to educate the Ians of the world on how best to support someone going through challenges. And there's things like, if I knew you were gravely ill, I may even avoid talking to you because it might make me feel uncomfortable. I might say the wrong thing. Or if there's been a death, there's grief there. I'm not going to talk about the person who's died because, well, that's get uncomfortable. And it's just, in fact, one of the things I'm looking to develop another workshop. And I thought a fun exercise could be some of the dumb things that people have said to us. Like one of the stories we captured, and it's something I never even thought of, was this guy, he and his wife were childless. And I never even thought that was a thing. But then when he shared the journey, for 10 years, they went through IVF. They got sold the dream, paid the money. And imagine the pain after 10 years that we can't keep doing this. And then to pull out. And I insensitively said, well, did you think about adoption? And he said to me, and you've got no idea what a trigger that is for us. And I immediately apologized. And that's, as I said, we say dumb things. But I want to do a series around people who've lost a child, either stillborn or miscarriage or even after. And some of the people said to me, oh, don't worry, you can have another child. Like, it's just, I said, it's an interesting, and I'm guilty of doing this, but let's educate people what to say. And sometimes you don't need to say anything, just be there. Turn up with a cake or a cup of coffee, or go for a walk, or just, and something I really struggle with, just be there and say nothing. And that's, I can't learn that. But anyway, that's, yeah. So I see a lot of good things coming from this. And it's something that I personally have gained a lot. I've learned a lot from the stories that have been shared already.
And Ian, I was wondering, looking now towards the future of your organizations and impact, what would you be celebrating in, let's say, 5 years' time? If things go really well.
Being alive. Hopefully. So there's one of the things I've seen, and I've established a number of businesses in my life, earlier on, for-profit ones, and some have been more successful than others. I could talk about those, but I guess the two recent ones, Mentoring Men and Kintsugi Heroes. And one of the things, I've seen things that hold people back from doing things. And one of the lessons is, to me, I like ready, fire, aim. I meet a lot of people who are ready, aim, 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 ready, aim, ready, aim, aim. And then some people just fire without getting ready at all, but they're a minority. And it's just to start moving. Now, I've mentioned I've started these things without any of the a lot of the relevant knowledge. How to set up a website, social media, all these things. But I just keep going. And if you have passion and you do things, it resonates a lot of people. Like Mentoring Men, every adult knows a man who is struggling with something, who would benefit. And for many of them, it resonates. Ian, how can I help? And all these volunteers came through and started helping. And the same things happen with Kintsugi Heroes. And it's, again, my wife, Helen, and I have put in the bulk of the funding to get this going. But there's been a number of exciting things happening. we reached agreement with Vision Australia, and all of our podcasts are going to be played on their national radio network. So they've got it. They say their audience about 700,000 people listen to
Wow.
Vision Australia a month. And I'm working through some other options around that, including TV. So for me, the success is that it's going and growing, that it's financially sustainable, and whether I'm here in 5 years or not, it's an ongoing legacy. My dream is that, like, two big dreams, that anyone going through a life challenge can readily find a story where they relate to the storyteller and the story relates to their situation. And if it's someone from an Indian culture in a wheelchair, who's been through this traumatic experience, then that's the story. And I'm not sure where this fits in yet. In fact, I said this workshop I was at, I've got this idea. I promised my wife I wouldn't start another charity, but I've got this concept. And I talked before about reestablishing the village. How good would it be if all around the world, every week in the local community centre, the local library, a group of people met in a facilitated environment where people share stories and listen to stories. People get heard. They support one another. They learn. There's a lot of science behind storytelling around the chemical impacts it has on the brain, around dopamine and other things that I don't know, around empathy. It reduces prejudice. There's a whole bunch of positive outcomes. Said I was chatting to people today who were left persecution in South American countries and came to Australia not speaking the language, and we started talking about their experiences. So I just see the benefit of getting back to just listening to people, getting people to tell their stories. And I don't know how that fits in. Is that an extension of the Kintsugi Heroes thing? So, or is it something different? I'm part of a trial in the Hornsby area of Sydney called the Hornsby Village Hub. And it's where they re-establish, predominantly aimed at the older generation who are more isolated. Like they've done a loneliness report. You know, being lonely is the equivalent health impact of smoking a packet of cigarettes a day. I think there's it's an epidemic of loneliness and isolation, and we need to try and, I guess, address that. I've got some ideas bubbling around, and maybe that's happening in 5 years' time as well. But I'd love to have a dedicated, paid team to continue this, and I will drop back and spend more time with my 12 grandkids.
How powerful legacy. I hear. I'm so sorry about Hornsby. I've been around for 5 years, as you know, and now I'm spending more time in Europe, so we are half a world away. Yet the question comes to me, how could I serve you? If someone is listening to this podcast now, who do you need to connect with to increase your impact or multiply the healing that you bring to the world? Who should contact you?
Andrew, thank you for the question. I get the first thing, you're doing it now. Just the fact that we're having this conversation. What we want to do, we're looking for corporates who have similar values to us, who understand what it is that we're doing and want to support what we're doing so that it can become sustainable. We're working on a project where we captured the stories of people impacted by the Black Summer bushfires in the Alpine area of Victoria. And I've been down there many times, and there's a huge amount of unresolved trauma And there's a whole bunch of issues related to that that are surfacing. So we're passionately doing something around that. In fact, we're publishing podcasts and we've got a book around that. Hopefully we'll get conversations going. But there's still costs with what we do. There's not significant costs. It's really good bang for buck. But what we're looking for, it could be an Australian corporate or even a global corporate. I got this exciting opportunity to be on American TV in September. This is one of these coincidences. Their first available date was the 10th of September, which is the same date my life changed. The most significant relationship I had growing up was with my mum, who was born on the 10th of September. And it's also World Suicide Prevention Day. So it's like bang, bang, bang. So, and that apparently that TV show is broadcast in over 100 countries around the world. So the message is going to keep growing and getting out there. They've got a number of exciting plans. In fact, we're putting together a corporate prospectus at the moment. So coming back to your question, if there was someone from a corporate who either wanted to sponsor us generically, or there was a theme. So far our stories we've captured stories around grief, a lot of addiction, and I didn't understand addiction, and I think most people don't. Physical disability, domestic violence, a relationship breakdown, mental illness, and a bunch of others. And I still want to do one around living with cancer, maybe stories around migrant refugee journey. So if there was someone who thought it'd be great to capture a series of episodes around that, then we would love to have a chat to those people as well.
Wonderful. And just do you want to tell us, and we'll put everything under the video, where to find you? What are the websites? Where are these wonderful productions of either Mentoring Men or Kintsugi Heroes? Do you want to just tell us?
Yeah, sure. So the Mentoring Men website is all one word, mentoringmen.org.au. The program at the moment only officially operates in Australia. The number's 1300 583 925. It's locked in my memory. But through the website, so if people are interested in becoming mentors or having a mentor, we call mentees. There's a free training program, and they also run suicide prevention training. That's open to men and women. So that's on the Mentoring Men side. Kintsugi Heroes, our website is Kintsugi, KINTSUGI Heroes, HEROES.com.au. And the best way to contact me would be ian@kintsugiheroes.com.au. So send an email. And please, any feedback. So we publish our podcast via YouTube and all the main audio platforms, and our first two books are nearing completion. So we take a cut down version of the stories, and we're putting these into books. There's a lot. You can see there's a fair number of costs associated around doing this. Hence, it'd be great to get some supporters or sponsorship.
It was a deep conversation with you, Ian. Would love to keep going for the next few hours. Yet, when we're close to finishing, what did I not ask you? What would you want to be giving it as your golden nuggets for the audience before we finish?
How long have I got? Because there's something that's been a persistent theme for me for the last 9 months or so around our best life. And can I share that with you? Is that okay?
Go ahead.
I've got 5 minutes. So the lead up to this, in September last year, my wife and I were on a pirate ship going around the Greek islands with a bunch of other cyclists. We're both keen cyclists. And the boat would pull in at a Greek island port. We'd get all the bikes off. We go for a ride with the tour guide around the island. And at one point, we're on an island. The guy takes us up to a hill and he stops us and he points to an island on the horizon. And he starts telling us the success story of Onassis. Now, Onassis is like a very famous man. He shared how he was born into poverty and then made his money on the black markets with tobacco and then invented packaged cigarettes, made a lot of money, then got into shipping. I think he became the richest man in the world. And most Americans, the number of Americans on the cruise, know of him because he married JFK's widow, became Jackie Onassis. And then he finished off the talk by saying Onassis was reported to have said, they say money can buy love. I want to tell you it's not true. I'm the richest man in the world. I've never found true love. In fact, after when he was married to Jackie Onassis, he was having an affair with the opera singer and obviously had a bunch of failed relationships. I couldn't help but raise my hand and say, look, I want to query, you talk about this as a success story. So you talk about a guy who's invented a product that's killed millions of people and caused countless untold damage to millions more and never found true love. I would argue that someone who's not wealthy but has strong relationships and found love is far more successful. And that thought resonated. And when I got back, I woke up jet lagged at 4 a.m. And I wanted, just for my own purposes, wanted to define success, or what I coined this phrase, the best life. And my idea of the best life is where we use our talents and abilities to positively impact the world around us. It's where we get genuine contentment and fulfillment. Then on the other side of the slide, I've got the baby being born and this meandering life journey. And there's a word map above it of all the things that happen in our life. And many of these are negative. We have relationships break down, we get sick, mental illness, we get trauma. And one of the key things, we get influenced by advertising and marketing. We become very materialistic. And for many people, yeah.
Ian, do you want to share? Do you have a slide? So I make sure that you can really show this to people so they can maybe freeze the screen and they are able to have a look at maybe a bit more visual. Some people.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me give this a go. Let's just go slide. There we go. Wonderful. There you go. Oh, I got it right too. So we use our talents, experiences, and we get genuine contentment. And these are things, and I talked before about the loss of the village that we've got. The amount of sport, exercise we do has dropped dramatically. We're far more sedentary. The food we eat is, I don't know if they're all these here, but we eat a lot more rubbish than we used to eat. Social media can be a huge issue. Whole bunch of stuff in there. And I say to people, look, I did this for my own benefit, but if I could just get you to pause for 10 seconds and maybe think about what would your best life look like? And are you moving towards that? And I love the Mark Twain quote at the bottom. The two most important days in your life are the day you're born and then the day you find out why. And for me, the 10th of September 2013 was the day that I found out why for this I can say the last portion of my life. Hopefully not the last portion, but the current portion of my life. So I guess, yeah, Andrew, thanks for the opportunity to share that last bit. But I guess that's where my head is at. And I wish everyone listening to this will pause and just think about their best life, and hopefully maybe move a little bit closer towards that.
Ian, thank you very much. What a powerful message and takeaway today, and what a deep transformation of your life and creating a new dimension, a new different life for probably millions of people who will come in contact with your legacy. Well, thank you very much. And as I said, freeze the screen if you need to study this slide. And I hope to see you again, Ian.
Andrew, thank you very much for the opportunity. I love what you're doing.